By the time the sheriff arrived, the fourth speed bump was already halfway bolted into my private road, and the woman holding the clipboard still believed she was the one in charge. That is the part one remember most clearly, not the anger, not even the shock, but the sound. A concrete drill at 6:12 in the morning has a way of cutting straight through sleep, straight through walls, straight through whatever quiet life you thought you had paid for. Growling chunk. Growling chunk. The window above my kitchen sink trembled. My coffee rippled in the mug. Somewhere in the hallway, the old floorboards gave that tired little creak my father used to call the house stretching its bones. For 1 second, half awake and barefoot on the cold tile, I thought maybe the county was working on the main road. Then the smell hit me. Hot asphalt. Burnt rubber. Fresh dust. Too close. I pulled the curtain back and saw a white contractor truck parked sideways at the entrance to Whitaker Lane, orange cones scattered across my gravel like somebody had spilled a box of warning signs. 3 men in reflective vests were standing around a strip of black rubber laid across my road, and one of them was driving bolt straight into the surface I owned. My private road. My half-mile lane. The road my father helped survey in 1989 with a red steel pin, a measuring wheel, and the stubborn belief that property lines still meant something in this country. I walked outside in jeans, a grey t-shirt, and no shoes, because when you wake up to strangers drilling into your land, you do not stop to lace your boots. The gravel bit into my soles. The air tasted like metal and burnt oil. At the edge of the ditch stood my sign, the same green and white one that had been there since before I bought the house, private road, Whitaker access only. And standing right beside it, smiling like she had been invited to a ribbon cutting, was Vivian Harrow, president of Willow Creek Estates HOA, real estate agent, neighborhood queen, and the reason half the subdivision checked their mailbox with anxiety. She wore white tennis shoes, pressed khaki pants, and a pale blue sweater tossed over her shoulders like she had stepped out of a country club brochure. Her Lexus sat behind her, clean enough to reflect the contractor truck, the cones, and my expression. "Good morning, Caleb," she called, bright and sweet. Too sweet. The kind of voice people use when they have already decided you are beneath them. "We are finally bringing your road up to community safety standards." I stopped 10 feet from the first speed bump and looked down. Yellow stripes. New bolts. Fresh rubber. The smell of it was sharp enough to sit on my tongue. "Vivian," I said, keeping my voice low, "you are installing speed bumps on my private road." She clicked her pen against the clipboard. Tap. 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 This road connects to Willow Creek property, and residents have raised concerns about speeding. I looked past her at the empty lane stretching toward my house, bordered by oaks, ditch grass, and a fence line I had paid to repair myself. No sidewalks. No playground. No school bus stop. No children wandering across it unless they were trespassing. "Residents do not use this road," I said. "They are not allowed to use this road." Her smile held. That is exactly the kind of attitude we are trying to correct. Behind her, one of the contractors lowered the drill again. Growling chunk. The sound bounced off the trees and landed somewhere behind my eyes. I raised one hand. "Stop drilling." The contractor paused, glanced at Vivian, then at me. Vivian did not even turn around. "Continue, please. We have authorization." That was when I noticed the second sign leaning against her Lexus, still wrapped in plastic. Willow Creek North Access, children at play. My stomach went cold before my temper even caught up. North Access. Not Whitaker Lane. Not private road. She was not just installing speed bumps. She was renaming my road in broad daylight. "You are not putting that sign on my land," I said. Vivian sighed, like I was a difficult child refusing vegetables. "Caleb, we have discussed this. Your rustic driveway has become a safety issue for the community. We have never discussed this. You ignored the notices. Because your HOA has no authority here. Her eyes flicked to the private road sign, then back to me. That sign is outdated. 5 words. Calm. Polished. Completely insane. The kind of sentence that tells you a person has built a whole fake reality and expects you to move into it. I looked at the contractor truck. I looked at the fresh bolts. I looked at Vivian's clipboard. Then I saw the small black dome of my mailbox camera pointed directly at all of us, its little red recording light blinking in the morning sun. Another camera sat under the porch gutter. Another was hidden in the old oak by the ditch. Vivian did not know about those. She also did not know about the metal document box in my garage, or the 1989 survey inside it, or the county drainage approval, or the restriction clause that said nobody could alter the surface, grade, drainage, or access of Whitaker Lane without my written permission. My father used to say the loudest person on a property dispute is usually the one with the weakest paperwork. So I did not shout. I did not threaten. I stepped back, let the gravel bite into my feet, and watched her contractor finish the 3rd speed bump. Vivian mistook my silence for surrender. She always did. By noon, the neighborhood Facebook page was full of posts about me. Dangerous. Uncooperative. Anti-community. One woman claimed I flew down the road at 40 miles an hour near children, which was impressive, considering the only people on my road that morning were 3 contractors and a woman committing trespass with a clipboard. At 5:48 p.m., Vivian emailed me the invoice, $4,800 for traffic calming improvements, plus future maintenance fees. Attached was a map. That was her mistake. Because on that map, she had renamed Whitaker Lane as North Access Lane and the survey marker beside the ditch was labeled 17B. I stared at the screen, and the room went quiet. Not peaceful quiet. The kind before a storm breaks. The real marker was 17R, a red steel pin my father had driven into the ground with his own hands. And Vivian's crew had been drilling right beside it. I did not answer Vivian's email that night. I let it sit there glowing on my laptop screen while the house settled around me and the smell of hot rubber still seemed trapped in my nose. Outside, Whitaker Lane looked wrong under the porch light. Those 3 yellow striped bumps cut across the gravel like somebody had painted ownership over my father's handwriting. I stood in the garage with the metal document box on my workbench, the same dented grey box Dad used to keep under his drafting table. The latch gave that dry little squeak I had heard 1,000 times as a kid, back when he would open it to show me deeds, maps, easements, and the kind of paper most people ignore until someone tries to take something from them. Inside were the originals, warranty deed, private road parcel description, the 1989 survey, the county drainage approval, and a recorded restriction that ran with the land. I ran my thumb over my father's old notes in blue ink. Maintain grade. Keep ditch clear. Marker 17R controls east edge. It hit me harder than I expected, not because Vivian had annoyed me, but because she had touched something my father built to keep this exact kind of nonsense away from our doorstep. He bought separation. He bought silence. He bought a road no committee could vote itself onto. The next morning, I put on boots before sunrise and walked the lane with a tape measure, a flashlight, and my phone recording in my jacket pocket. The air was damp, and my breath came out in pale clouds. Every step made the gravel crunch beneath me, except where the contractors had smeared black patching compound around the bolts. The first speed bump sat 82 feet inside my property line. The second was directly uphill from the drainage swale. The third was 6 feet from the red survey pin, or where the red survey pin should have been. I crouched by the ditch and brushed aside wet grass with my glove. Nothing. Just torn soil, a few flakes of red paint, and a fresh gouge where metal had been ripped out. My jaw tightened, but I kept recording. Marker 17R is missing, I said into the phone. Ground disturbed. Fresh tire marks. Installed obstruction within private drainage area. A truck slowed at the subdivision entrance. One of Vivian's board members, Paul Henley, leaned out of his window with a paper coffee cup in his hand. You know, Caleb, this would all be easier if. You just worked with the neighborhood. I looked up at him. Your neighborhood ends at that stone pillar. He smiled the way people smile when they think numbers and committees make them right. Vivian says the county recognizes this as emergency access now. Then Vivian can show me the recorded document. His smile twitched. You are making yourself look hostile. That word followed me the rest of the morning. Hostile. That was how they did it. They stepped onto your land, drilled into your road, renamed your property, billed you for the damage, and when you asked for proof, you became the problem. By 9 o'clock, 2 more signs appeared on the neighborhood side, slow down for children and HOA traffic control in effect. My cameras caught Vivian herself placing the second one, her sunglasses pushed into her hair, her clipboard tucked under one arm. She stood there admiring it like a freshly planted rosebush. Then she turned toward my private road sign and said to the contractor, clear as church bells on the audio, once the new signage is up, he will have a much harder time claiming this is private. I watched that clip 3 times in my kitchen. The refrigerator hummed. My coffee went cold. That sentence was not attitude. That was intent. I saved the video to 2 drives, printed the email map, and circled 17B in red ink so hard the pen almost tore the paper. Then I called the county records office, not the front desk this time, but Marlene Price, the clerk who had known my father back when people still filed surveys on paper and shook hands after arguments. She answered on the 4th ring, and when I told her Vivian Harrow had submitted a traffic safety request on Whitaker Lane, the line went silent for one breath too long. Caleb, she said, carefully, you need to come see what she filed. The county records office smelled like toner, old paper, and burnt coffee, the same smell I remembered from childhood when Dad used to drag me there on Friday afternoons and teach me that every fence, road, and ditch had a history if you knew which drawer to open. Marlene Price met me at the side counter with a folder already in her hand. She was in her 60s now. Silver hair clipped back, reading glasses hanging from a chain, and the kind of calm face county clerks get after decades of watching people discover that paper can ruin a lie faster than shouting ever could. I pulled the filing from Willow Creek Estates, she said. It came in last week. Last week. That meant Vivian had planned this before the first drill ever touched my road. Marlene slid the folder across the counter. The paper was warm from the copier. I looked at the cover sheet first, Community Traffic Safety Improvement Request, North Access Lane, Willow Creek Estates. There it was again. North Access Lane. Not Whitaker Lane. Not private parcel. Not my land. My thumb left a faint smudge on the corner as I turned the page. The attached map was cleaner than the one Vivian emailed me, with blue arrows showing recommended resident flow, dotted lines for emergency convenience access, and a shaded strip drawn right over my road. The language was soft. Cooperative. Civic-minded. Pure poison with a letterhead. Then I saw the signature block. Vivian Harrow, HOA President, Authorized Representative for Affected Access Corridor. I let out a slow breath through my nose. Affected Access Corridor, I said. Marlene lowered her voice. That is not a legal category in this county. I know. And she checked the box saying the HOA maintains the surface. I looked down. There it was. A small checked square. One lie. One little mark of ink trying to erase 34 years of recorded ownership. My father's voice came back to me so clearly I almost turned my head. A man can dress up trespass in nice words, Caleb, but the deed still knows where the line is. Marlene opened another drawer and pulled out a thick plat book, the old kind with yellowing pages and corners soft from use. She flipped to Whitaker Lane and tapped the survey notation with one red fingernail. Private ingress. Separate tax parcel. Owner maintained. Drainage restriction recorded in 1989. No public dedication. No HOA dedication. No emergency easement. Each sentence landed like a hammer on a nail. Clean. Final. She made certified copies while the printer coughed behind her? I could Here every mechanical whir, every sheet sliding out, every stamp hitting paper with a dull thump. Certified. 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 The sound of a lie getting surrounded. Before I left, Marlene handed me one more page. You did not get this from gossip, she said. You got it because it is public record. But you should know something. I looked at her. Vivian asked whether a traffic improvement, once installed and used by residents, could support future recognition as a shared access route. The room seemed to narrow around that sentence. The fluorescent lights hummed overhead. Somewhere behind me, a man laughed softly at another counter, completely unaware that my road had just turned into a chessboard. What did you tell her? I asked. Marlene's mouth tightened. I told her to speak with an attorney. Then I told her not to alter private property without consent. Of course Vivian heard only the part she wanted. I drove home with the certified copies on the passenger seat, held flat beneath my work glove so the heater would not curl the pages. The whole way back, those yellow speed bumps waited in my head. They were not about safety. They were not about children. They were a footprint. A staged fact. Something Vivian could point to later and say, look, we maintain this road. Look, residents use it. Look, the owner allowed it. When I turned onto Whitaker Lane, my tires thumped over the first bump, then the second, then the third, each one a dull insult under the truck. Near the subdivision entrance, Vivian had gathered 3 neighbors and a man I recognized from her real estate flyers. He wore polished boots and held a tablet, filming the new sign like it was a property feature. Vivian saw my truck and gave me a little wave. Not friendly. Possessive. I parked by the ditch, stepped out, and felt the wind push coal dust against my face. Caleb, she called, I hope you are ready to start being reasonable. I held up the certified folder. I just came from county records. Her smile did not vanish. It adjusted. That was worse. Good, she said. Then you understand this is bigger than one homeowner. I am not in your HOA. Your road affects our community. My road is private. She tilted her head toward the man with the tablet. Private roads can become shared roads when the facts on the ground change. There it was. Said out loud. Softly. Smoothly. Recorded by my phone in my jacket pocket. I looked at the speed bumps, the fake sign, the missing survey marker, and Vivian standing there like she had already won. Then I realized she was not trying to win an argument. She was trying to build evidence. So I decided to build better evidence. I started with the mailbox camera because it saw everything Vivian thought nobody noticed. The lens was hidden behind a small black slot above the flag, angled toward the road entrance, catching the contractor trucks, the signposts, the neighbors slowing down to stare, and Vivian walking around with that clipboard like it was a badge. The next camera went in the oak tree by the drainage ditch, strapped behind a patch of bark-colored housing I had used for deer season years earlier. The third sat in my truck, dash facing downhill toward the bumps. By sunset, Whitaker Lane looked quiet again, but it was the kind of quiet that listens back. The wind moved through the dry grass. The new yellow stripes glowed under the low sun. Every bolt head caught the light like a little silver eye. I spent that evening at my kitchen table, building a timeline while the house smelled like printer ink and cold coffee. 6:12 in the morning, drilling began. 6:28, Vivian gave verbal instruction to continue after I objected. 7:03, fake north access sign placed. 5:48, invoice received. County filing dated 1 week prior. False maintenance claim checked. Wrong survey marker listed. Missing red pin found disturbed. Each note went into a folder. Each video got copied to a hard drive, then another. My father taught me to measure twice and cut once. I was measuring Vivian's mistake from every angle. The next morning, I called an old surveyor named Roy Pritchard. He had worked with my father back when cell phones were still bricks and every truck had a paper county map stuffed behind the seat. Roy was 73, bow-legged, sun-browned, and still sharper than men half. His age. His truck rattled up my lane at 8:15, a green survey tripod bouncing in the bed, the smell of pipe tobacco drifting out when he opened the door. He stepped out, looked at the speed bumps, then looked at me over the top of his glasses. "Somebody got brave," he said. "Somebody got stupid," I answered. Roy chuckled once, dry as gravel. Then his face changed when I showed him where 17R used to be. He knelt slowly by the ditch, brushed dirt away with 2 fingers, and found the scrape line in the soil. "They pulled it or broke it," he said. "Fresh disturbance. See that?" I saw it. A clean gouge under the grass mat, red paint flakes pressed into the mud, and a faint round hole where the steel pin had held the earth for more than 3 decades. Roy set his jaw. That marker was recorded. He said recorded the way a churchman says sacred. He set up the tripod and began shooting points, calling out numbers while I wrote them down. Distance from subdivision pillar. Distance from road center line. Distance from drainage swale. Distance from the first speed bump. The numbers told the story without raising their voice. Vivian's first bump was not near the boundary. It was 82 feet inside my parcel. The second changed water flow toward my lower ditch. The third sat close enough to the missing marker to make the damage impossible to pretend away. While Roy worked, 2 golf carts rolled up from Willow Creek Estates. Vivian was in the first one, of course, sunglasses on, lips tight, a travel mug in the cup holder. Paul Henley sat beside her, looking less confident now that a real survey tripod stood in the road. "Caleb," Vivian called, "what exactly is this?" Roy did not look up. "Survey." Her smile snapped into place. "We already have a map." Roy finally turned his head. "What you have is a drawing." The air went still enough that I heard Paul's golf cart battery hum. Vivian stepped onto the gravel, careful not to scuff her white shoes. This work was approved for community safety. I held up my phone. "Then you will have no problem explaining why you told your contractor that once the signage was up, I would have a harder time claiming the road. Was private." Her sunglasses hid her eyes, but not the way her fingers tightened around the mug. Paul looked at her. That was the first crack. Small, but real. Then Roy pointed his survey rod at the ditch. "And somebody removed a recorded marker." Vivian's voice sharpened. "That is a serious accusation." "No," Roy said, calm as sunrise. "It is a serious fact." I watched her swallow. For the first time, the clipboard was not enough. She turned back toward the golf cart and said, too loudly, "We will let legal handle this." But as she drove away, my oak camera caught her whispering to Paul, "Get the contractor back before the county sees that pin." That sentence reached my phone 5 seconds later. Clear audio. Clean video. Perfect angle. I stood there beside Roy, the cold wind moving dust across the fake sign, and felt the whole thing shift. Vivian was no longer building facts. She was trying to hide them. By 10:30 that morning, Vivian's confidence had turned into activity, and activity always leaves tracks. Her contractor truck came back without the company logo magnets on the doors, as if removing 2 vinyl signs could make a 3/4-ton pickup invisible. My mailbox camera caught it rolling past the private road sign at 11 miles an hour, tires popping over the first speed bump they had just installed the day before. 2 men stepped out with shovels, a pry bar, and a 5-gallon bucket. Not drills this time. Not bolts. Clean-up tools. I watched from my kitchen window with the lights off, the certified folder open on the table beside me and Roy Pritchard's fresh survey note still smelling like damp paper and field dust. The taller contractor pointed toward the ditch where 17R had been, then glanced back toward the subdivision like a man who knew he was doing something that would not look good in daylight. I did not go outside. That was the hardest part. Every muscle in me wanted to walk down there and ask what they thought they were touching. But my father's voice was steady in my head. "Do not interrupt a man while he is proving your case." So I let the cameras work. The oak camera caught the first shovel bite into the disturbed soil. The mailbox. Camera caught the bucket set down beside the ditch. The truck camera caught Vivian arriving 8 minutes later in her Lexus, slowing just enough to lower her window. Her voice was faint, but clear enough. Make it look like routine shoulder repair. The word slid through my headphones and landed cold in my chest. Routine shoulder repair. That was what she called hiding a survey marker. That was what she called cleaning up her own mistake. I saved the clip, backed it up, and sent it to Roy. His reply came back in less than a minute: do not touch anything. Call the sheriff. I had been waiting for that sentence. Sheriff Dale Mercer was not a dramatic man. He had the calm, weathered voice of someone who had spent 26 years hearing neighbors turn molehills into mountains and mountains into lawsuits. When I called the non-emergency line and gave my name, the dispatcher put me through faster than I expected. Caleb Whitaker, he said. Marlene Price already called me. That stopped me for half a second. She did. She said private road, false filing, missing marker, and an HOA president with more confidence than paperwork. For the first time all morning, I almost smiled. That is accurate. He asked for the facts, not feelings. I gave him times, distances, document names, and what the cameras had captured. No speeches. No neighborhood drama. Just trespass, alteration of private roadway, removal or concealment of a recorded survey marker, and possible false claim of maintenance authority in a county filing. Sheriff Mercer stayed quiet until I finished. In that silence, I could hear the refrigerator humming, the faint scrape of a shovel outside, and my own pulse in my ears. Then he said, do not confront them. I am sending a deputy. I am coming with the county inspector. I looked out the window. Vivian had stepped from her Lexus now, arms folded, watching the contractors smooth dirt over the ditch like frosting over a bad cake. They are still here, I said. Good, Mercer answered. Let them stay there. By 12:15, the sky had gone flat and grey, the kind of winter light that makes every color look guilty. The contractors had moved on from the ditch and were unwrapping another speed bump near the curve by my lower pasture. The fourth one. Vivian stood beside them, phone in hand, probably preparing another post about safety and community values. Then the first sheriff's cruiser turned onto Whitaker Lane. No siren. No drama. Just black tires crunching over my gravel, moving slow enough for every camera to catch it. A second county vehicle followed, white with the inspection department seal on the door. Vivian saw them and straightened like somebody had pulled a string through her spine. By the time I walked outside with the metal document box under one arm, she had already put her smile back on. Sheriff, she called, stepping forward before he even shut his door, I am so glad you are here. Mr. Whitaker has been creating unnecessary tension over an approved safety improvement. Sheriff Mercer looked at the speed bump lying half unwrapped on my road. Then he looked at the fake North Access sign, the disturbed ditch, the contractor tools, and finally at me. His face gave away nothing. Mr. Whitaker, he said, do you have your paperwork? I set the metal box on the hood of my truck. The latch snapped open, sharp and clean in the cold air. Vivian's smile flickered when she saw the certified stamps. The certified stamps changed the temperature on that road faster than any cold front could have. Vivian had been standing there like a woman hosting a neighborhood ribbon cutting, but the moment Sheriff Mercer picked up the first document, her shoulders stiffened under that pale blue sweater. The county inspector, a square-built man named Luis Ortega, leaned over the hood beside him with a clipboard of his own, the kind that actually carried authority. I started with the deed. Then the separate tax parcel description. Then the 1989 survey. Then the recorded restriction. One page at a time, no speeches, no drama, just paper sliding against the metal hood of my truck while the wind pushed the smell of fresh rubber and wet dirt across the lane. Whitaker Lane is a privately owned access road, I said. Separate parcel. Owner maintained. No public dedication. No HOA dedication. No recorded emergency. Easement. No written permission from me for construction, signage, speed control devices, surface changes, grading changes, or drainage obstruction. Vivian gave a small laugh, thin and polished. Sheriff, this is a community matter. The road connects to our subdivision. Mercer did not look up. A connection is not ownership. That sentence landed so cleanly even Paul Henley stopped shifting his weight. Ortega crouched by the first speed bump and ran one gloved hand over the bolt line. Who installed these? The contractor foreman lifted his hand halfway, then seemed to regret it. We were hired by Willow Creek Estates. Permit? Ortega asked. The foreman looked at Vivian. Vivian looked at her clipboard. The clipboard had nothing to say. It is traffic calming, she said. For child safety. Ortega stood and pointed toward the empty ditch, the pasture fence, the oak trees, and my house sitting nearly half a mile back. Where is the pedestrian zone? Vivian's mouth opened, then closed. The only sound for a second was the light ticking of the contractor truck cooling in the road. Sheriff Mercer turned to me. You said there was a recorded marker disturbed. I walked him to the ditch. The ground still showed the contractor's fresh smoothing, darker than the surrounding soil, too neat, too recent. I handed him Roy's survey notes and the still photo from the oak camera. Red paint flakes. Shovel. Bucket. Vivian's Lexus in frame. Mercer studied it without changing expression. Then I played the audio. Vivian's voice came through my phone speaker, small but clear in the grey air. Make it look like routine shoulder repair. Nobody moved. Even the contractor looked down at his boots. Mercer asked the deputy to look in the truck bed and around the work area. A minute later, the deputy returned holding a muddy red steel pin inside an evidence bag, its chipped paint catching the weak winter light. Found near the bucket behind the passenger side, he said. My throat tightened before I could stop it. 34 years in the ground, and there it was, reduced to something in a plastic bag because Vivian Harrow wanted a shortcut for her subdivision. Sheriff Mercer looked at the pin, then at Vivian. Do you have written authorization from Mr. Whitaker to alter this road or remove that marker? Vivian's face had gone pale under her makeup, but she still tried to smile. The HOA acted in good faith based on our understanding of access rights. That was not my question. The wind moved through the dry grass. A neighbor's phone camera was recording from a golf cart near the stone pillar. Paul stared at the ground like it had suddenly become fascinating. Vivian swallowed. No, not written authorization specifically from him. Ortega let out one quiet breath and pointed to the second speed bump. That one changes runoff. Water will stack on the uphill side and cut into the shoulder during heavy rain. This road has a recorded drainage certification. They altered a protected drainage surface without approval. The contractor foreman rubbed both hands over his face. We just followed the work order. Then you can follow this one, Sheriff Mercer said. He turned toward the crew, his voice calm enough to make it worse. No more installation. Remove every speed bump you placed. Remove the unauthorized signs. Do not disturb that ditch again unless the county tells you to. And nobody from Willow Creek Estates drives another vehicle onto this lane without the owner's permission. Vivian snapped her head up. Sheriff, you cannot just order HOA property removed. Mercer looked at the yellow rubber strip bolted into my road. It is not on HOA property. That was the moment the whole performance collapsed. No shouting. No dramatic gesture. Just one sentence, a deed, and a muddy red survey pin in a plastic bag. The contractor picked up his drill again, but this time the sound was different. Not grrr chunk going in. Reverse torque. Metal releasing. Bolts coming out one by one. Vivian stood beside her Lexus while the first speed bump peeled away from my road with a sticky rubber groan, and for the first time since I had known her, she had nothing clever to say. The first speed bump came off in pieces, not because it was old, but because bad work never survives careful removal. The contractor had used the wrong anchors for mixed gravel and patch, so every time the drill reversed, the bolts shrieked against the sleeves and lifted chunks of black compound with them. The sound scraped through the cold afternoon like a confession. Chunk. Whine. Pop. One by one, the yellow strips Vivian had called safety curled away from Whitaker Lane and landed in the back of the contractor truck, dirty, bent, and useless. I stood near the hood of my truck with the metal document box still open, watching Sheriff Mercer write notes while Inspector Ortega photographed the holes left behind in the road surface. Vivian had retreated beside her Lexus, but she had not left. People like Vivian do not leave when they lose. They stand close enough to pretend they are supervising the loss. Her arms were folded tight, her jaw working, her sunglasses back on even though the sky had gone flat and grey. Paul Henley whispered something to her, and she snapped back under her breath, sharp enough that my oak camera probably caught it. Across the stone pillar, residents had gathered in golf carts and crossover SUVs. They had come expecting to see me corrected. Instead, they were watching county authority peel their HOA project off my land like a sticker from glass. The second speed bump took longer. When the contractors pried it up, water trap beneath the rubber strip seeped into the bolt holes, dark and muddy. Ortega crouched beside it and pointed with his pen. "See that?" he said to Mercer. "It is already holding runoff." I looked down at the wet stain spreading through the gravel. That was the part Vivian never understood. A road is not just a road. It is grade, crown, ditch, flow, soil, stone, and time. You change one piece without knowing the rest, and the land makes you pay for it. My father could have told her that in 10 seconds. She would not have listened. Mercer turned to the contractor foreman. "You are responsible for temporary patching before you leave today. Permanent repair will be between your company, the HOA, and Mr. Whitaker." The foreman nodded fast. "Yes, sir." Vivian stepped forward. The HOA should not be responsible for excessive restoration demands. Ortega looked at her, then at the damaged ditch, then at the holes in my road. "You installed unauthorized traffic devices on a certified private drainage surface and disturbed a recorded survey marker. Restoration is not excessive. It is the starting point." A quiet ripple moved through the residence. Phones tilted. Someone muttered, "Recorded marker." Another voice said, "She told us the county approved it." Vivian heard that. Her face tightened. The story she had sold them was starting to crack in public, and public cracks spread fast. Then Sheriff Mercer asked for the work order. The foreman opened his tablet with fingers that looked suddenly clumsy and pulled up the signed document. He handed it over without making eye contact. Mercer read it. Ortega leaned in. I watched Vivian's posture change by half an inch. Not much. Just enough. The way a person shifts when they hear a floorboard creak under their own weight. Mercer looked up. "This says Willow Creek Estates HOA certifies ownership or maintenance authority over the affected roadway." The foreman pointed toward Vivian without really pointing. "That is what we were given." Mercer turned the tablet slightly so Vivian could see her own electronic signature at the bottom. "Is this yours?" Her smile tried to return, but it came back damaged. "As president, I sign many operational documents." That is not an answer. The wind lifted a corner of the fake children at play sign lying on the shoulder. It tapped against the gravel. Tap. 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 Vivian looked toward the residents, then at me, then back at the sheriff. "I signed based on the board's understanding." Paul's head snapped up. "Vivian, the board never voted on ownership." There it was. The second crack. Cleaner than the first. The residents heard it. The deputy heard it. The contractor heard it. Mercer wrote something down. Vivian turned on Paul with her eyes, but he had already stepped back, palms slightly raised, choosing distance over loyalty. The third speed bump came loose while nobody spoke. Its anchors popped free in a row, each one sounding like a small period at the end of Vivian's excuses. When the contractor lifted it, the underside was coated with wet grit and red paint flakes from the ditch. Ortega photographed that too. Vivian saw the camera flash and finally said nothing. By the time the unauthorized signs were pulled from the ground, the sun was dropping behind the trees and Whitaker Lane looked wounded but mine again. The hole still had to be patched. The ditch still had to be restored. The red pin still sat in evidence. But the fake name was gone. North Access Lane had never existed anywhere that mattered. Sheriff Mercer handed me a card and said, "Send your repair estimates to my office and the county inspector. Do not negotiate through her." He did not raise his voice, but Vivian heard every word. Then he looked at the contractor truck loaded with broken speed bumps. "Take all of it with you." The truck rolled away slowly, carrying Vivian's little empire in bent yellow strips. I watched it cross back into Willow Creek Estates, and for the first time all day, the only sound on my road was gravel under tires. The next morning, the silence on Whitaker Lane felt different. Not peaceful yet, not repaired, but honest. The fake signs were gone. The yellow stripes were gone. The contractor's tire marks still scarred the gravel, and the patched bolt holes looked like dark freckles across the road, but the lane belonged to itself again. I walked it at sunrise with a mug of coffee in one hand and my phone in the other, recording the damage for the county file. Frost clung to the ditch grass. The air smelled like wet earth and cold asphalt patch. Every few feet, I stopped, took a photograph, measured the surface, marked the location, and moved on. 82 feet inside my property line. 146 feet. 211 feet. The numbers were clean. The damage was not. By 9 o'clock, Inspector Ortega emailed his preliminary report. Unauthorized traffic devices. Improper surface alteration. Drainage interference. Disturbance of recorded survey control. Recommended full restoration by licensed road contractor and re-establishment of marker 17R by certified surveyor. I read that last line twice. Re-establishment of marker 17R. My father's red pin was going back into the ground, not because I yelled the loudest, but because the record demanded it. That should have been the end of it. Vivian should have taken the loss, paid the repair bill, and disappeared behind her HOA newsletter language. But people like Vivian do not lose once and learn. They lose once and look for someone to blame. At 11:17, a new email arrived from Willow Creek Estates. Subject line, Notice of Temporary Access Review. My name was spelled wrong. That told me plenty before I opened it. The message claimed the HOA was investigating conflicting interpretations of Whitaker Lane and requested that I refrain from obstructing historical community movement until the board could evaluate equitable access expectations. It was the same trick again, softer words, cleaner margins, no legal backbone. Attached was a meeting notice scheduled for that evening at the clubhouse. Agenda Item 3, North Access Corridor Dispute. I laughed once, not because it was funny, but because the nerve of it had become almost mechanical. My road had a name. My deed had a name. The county had a name. Vivian kept inventing new ones, like changing the label could move the property line. I forwarded the email to Sheriff Mercer and Inspector Ortega, then called Roy Pritchard. He answered with wind in the background and something metal clanging near him. "She is not done, is she?" he said. "Not even close." "Then neither are we." By 6:30, I drove to the clubhouse, not because the HOA had authority over me, but because Vivian had made one mistake I could not ignore. She had turned a private trespass into a public performance, and public performances create witnesses. The Willow Creek clubhouse smelled like floor polish, coffee pods, and expensive candles trying to cover old carpet. Folding chairs filled the room. Residents whispered when I walked in carrying the metal document box. Vivian sat at the front table beneath a framed sign that said Community First. Paul Henley sat 2 seats away from her, staring at a stack of papers like he wished they would catch fire. Vivian tapped the microphone. The speakers squealed, sharp and ugly. "Tonight," she said, "we address a misunderstanding involving a shared safety concern." I stayed standing. At the back. She clicked to the first slide. There was my road again, renamed North Access Corridor in bold blue letters. Then she made her final mistake. She showed a photo of the installed speed bumps as proof the HOA had begun maintaining the lane. The room went quiet. I set my metal box on the nearest table. The latch snapped open so loudly half the heads turned. "Vivian," I said, "you just showed unauthorized work the sheriff ordered removed yesterday." Her smile froze. "Mr. Whitaker, you are out of order." Paul suddenly stood up. His chair scraped the floor like a match strike. "No," he said, voice shaking but clear. "He is not. And the board never approved that contractor invoice." Vivian turned toward him slowly. That was when Paul lifted a folder of his own. "I checked the HOA account this afternoon. The payment did not come from road maintenance. It came from the Development Marketing Reserve." The room changed. You could feel it, like pressure dropping before a thunderstorm. Residents sat straighter. Someone whispered, "Development." Vivian reached for the microphone, but Paul was not finished. "And the reserve is tied to your new listing package for the 18 lots behind the subdivision." I looked at Vivian then, really looked at her. The speed bumps had never been the endgame. They were the sales pitch. The word sales pitch moved through that clubhouse without anyone saying it out loud. It was in the way Vivian's hand froze over the microphone, in the way Paul kept his folder lifted like it had suddenly become heavier, in the way the residents stopped whispering and started listening. For the first time since I had known Willow Creek Estates, the room was not afraid of Vivian. It was studying her. The projector hummed against the back wall, throwing that blue fake name across the screen, North Access Corridor, clean letters over a road she did not own. I could smell stale coffee, floor wax, and the sharp citrus candle burning on the sign-in table, but underneath all of it was something better, panic trying to hide behind perfume. Vivian cleared her throat. "This is an internal budget matter and not relevant to Mr. Whitaker's complaint." Paul shook his head. "It is relevant if HOA funds were used to improve the market value of property you were personally listing." A woman in the second row gasped softly. Someone else said, "She told us it was for kids." That hit harder than any speech could have. Vivian had wrapped a real estate shortcut in child safety language, and now the wrapping was coming off in front of the people who had paid for it. I opened my metal box and laid out the certified copies on the table closest to me. Deed. Survey. Restriction. County drainage approval. Inspector Ortega's report. Sheriff Mercer's incident card. I did not walk to the front. I did not need the microphone. My father used to say truth does not need a stage if the room is quiet enough. "Yesterday," I said, "the county confirmed my road is private. The sheriff ordered the devices removed. A recorded survey marker was found disturbed. And now your own board member is saying the invoice was paid from a marketing reserve connected to Vivian's listings." Vivian's chair scraped back. "That is a reckless accusation." Paul flipped open the folder. "It is a bank statement." The room went dead still. Not quiet. Still. Like everyone had heard a lock click. Paul placed the statement on the front table, then another page, then another. Contractor invoice. HOA payment. Marketing reserve transfer. Listing packet for 18 future homes advertising convenient northside access. Convenient. That word sat there like a wet footprint on clean tile. Vivian looked at the papers, then at the residents, then at me, and for 1 second I saw the whole performance fail behind her eyes. Not guilt. Calculation. She was looking for the next door out. Sheriff Mercer found it first. He stepped in from the hallway with Inspector Ortega beside him. Nobody had seen them arrive, but the sudden silence told Vivian before she turned around. Mercer held up one hand, calm as ever. "This meeting can continue later." I need copies of those financial records. Vivian's voice thinned. Sheriff, HOA finances are civil. Some are, he said. False filings, property damage, and misused funds tied to a private benefit can become something else. That was all he said, but it was enough. The next week moved with the slow grind of machinery you cannot stop once it starts. The county reinstalled Marker 17R with Roy Pritchard present, and when the red steel pin went back into the ditch, the sound of the hammer striking it felt like my father's signature returning to the land. A licensed road crew repaired the bolt holes, restored the crown, cleaned the drainage swale, and built Willow Creek estates. Not me. The fake North Access language vanished from the HOA website within 48 hours. The 18-lot listing packet disappeared the same day. 2 board members resigned before the special meeting. Vivian lasted 9 more days. Her resignation email used words like distraction, misunderstanding, and community healing. It did not use trespass. It did not use false certification. It did not use the phrase she hated most, no authority. But everybody understood. The final settlement did not make me rich, and that was never the point. The HOA paid for restoration, survey work, legal fees, camera costs, and